First, let me thank the testifiers. I think, as everybody knows, the process is ongoing, and Provost Bruno is working very hard. Last I saw, he had over 80 meetings with individual departments, meetings with deans, and the notes continue to be updated, and the meetings with the deans have also been, I think, for perhaps the first time, posted online as well. So there is a lot of work going on, but obviously it hasn't yet satisfied everyone in the community. But we're committed to continue to do better with our many stakeholders, including the groups from whom we've just heard. I want to say a little bit about COVID, enrollment, research, and some recent financial achievements that have been undertaken by Vice President Young. So first, I think it's hard to watch the news without seeing colleges and universities accused of being super spreaders within communities. When I checked this morning to finalize these remarks, we were at 40 cases for our 10 campuses across the state since April. And that is a remarkable achievement. I want to credit our students for their responsible behavior, our faculty for their work to move online and eliminate large clusters on our campuses, and leadership teams across the system on all of our campuses. In other parts of the country, we have not seen this kind of success. I know our mayors were extremely concerned about universities resuming classes, and I think we've demonstrated our capability to buck that trend. Our current plan is that spring 2021 will look a lot like fall. We are not assuming that this coronavirus will be gone from our communities. We will maintain vigilance, and we look forward to the day when we can welcome many more of our students, faculty, and staff onto our campuses. But we will remain extremely vigilant and look forward to better times. I want to say that we will be, I've mentioned before, the testing lab established at JABSOM, and in particular I want to credit Vivek Nerurkar and Rosie Allegado, who were really instrumental in getting this set up at JABSOM with the leadership of Dean Jarris Hedges. And the first live showing of this will be, I believe, today, where the lab will be swabbing 12 firefighters at the Kaka'ako station with the mayor. So it took a little longer to get running than we had hoped, but the perseverance has been remarkable beyond supply chains and everything else to get us up and running. Now, that said, whenever I'm out in public and I give remarks about our success in education, in research, in the amazing work of our faculty, in testing and other initiatives, immediately the first question I get is about football. So today I want to say we have gotten clearance to play football this season. Previously we have announced the modified schedule, and that was contingent on getting the approval of necessary state and county authorities in every jurisdiction where we play. We will be traveling for 4 games. We will have 4 home games. The Mountain West testing regime that was adopted by all of our Mountain West schools has been supplemented to meet Hawaiʻi requirements, and we're really glad we have this opportunity for our student athletes, but also for our community, which is really interested in seeing some return to normalcy. We will not have fans. There will be no fans at Aloha Stadium, so it will be unusual. We see, in particular in the South, there is a lot of attendance at athletics. Pros have been mixed on this, and we're taking a conservative approach in Hawaii, along with about half of our fellow Mountain West schools will have no fans. All of our games will be televised live, however, either on national media or on Spectrum pay-per-view. Let me shift now to enrollment. There's both good news and bad news, but on balance, I'm quite grateful for where we are. In fact, a report that came out just this morning noted the decline in enrollment across the country, quite significant. At UH, we have bucked all trends, even where we have declines. Those declines are smaller than the national averages. So our total system headcount is down less than 1%. It's 0.8%. This is the smallest decline we've seen since 2012. So the Titanic is turning in this regard. 3 of our campuses actually have headcount enrollment. UH Manoa is up over 3%, UH West Oahu almost 4%, and Kauai Community College over 6%. For UH West Oahu, this is the highest headcount in UH West Oahu history, and for UH Manoa, it's the highest headcount enrollment since 2016. Similarly, full-time equivalent enrollment is also up for these 3 campuses. Just a few highlights, and we'll be putting out a longer release later today. Full-time freshman enrollment at UH Manoa is over almost 2,200, exceeding last fall, and it is the highest numbers of first-time freshmen at UH Manoa since 1981. So we've made some real inroads on bringing in new students. Same kind of increase for UH West Oahu as well. We made a particular effort to bring in more local students, and we worked on that all over the summer. And that was quite successful. The going rate, or college participation rate, for Hawaii high school graduates into the UH system increased 1.4% to a total of 32%. Public high school going rate was up a little over almost 33%, and private high school going rate had a larger increase, and it's at about 28.5%. We also had an increase in classified transfers into the system. Transfers into UH Manoa were up 14%, and transfers into West Oahu increased about 15%. So quite successful. Those are transfers both from our community colleges, but also from other colleges and universities around the campus. We also had increases in first-generation students. Those are students whose parents neither of their parents had gone to college. That's now 22.3% of our total UH enrollment. That's the highest number we've had since we began collecting this measure in 2015. And our Native Hawaiian ancestry enrollment is now up over 25% system-wide to 25.6. This is also a high since we developed a more effective methodology for reporting in fall 2005, and compares that 25.6 enrollment of Native Hawaiians within UH compares pretty favorably to the percentage of Hawaiian and part Hawaiians in the overall population, which is a little bit under 22%. So lots of good news. The community colleges are probably our biggest challenge right now, also UH West Oahu, but also some bright spots. Also UH Hilo. Enrollment dropped at UH Hilo by about 6%, but a lot of that was exacerbated by a decrease in early college enrollment. So the impact was less on our traditional campus-based students. Community colleges are down about 3% overall. That number is about 9% nationally. But we also saw increases in the community colleges for our underserved communities on whom we target our efforts. I mentioned Kauai Community College is up. One question, and nobody understands this nationally just yet, but we're trying to understand whether the community college enrollment is likely to increase next year. And our experience with the last recession was that our largest enrollment increase by far was in community colleges, but for some reason that we don't understand just yet, it was delayed as well. Anecdotally, we believe more students stayed close to home, deciding that sticking with UH would be a wise choice. We think that's both based on our being a safe environment, as I mentioned, but we also think more families in Hawaii have come to appreciate the wide range of superb and affordable options that the UH system offers, from one of the best research universities in the world, highly accessible regional comprehensive universities and amazing community colleges that are focused on helping those who are perhaps not prepared for attending a university just yet, and those who are looking for preparation into the workforce, as well as those looking for an affordable transfer pathway into a university education. I mentioned the UH Research Enterprise, and these are numbers I watch daily, as I've mentioned before. As of today, we're up about 3.7% over last year's record year, or almost record year. It was the best year we've had, other than when we were benefiting from the ARRA Stimulus Act. Vice President Sirmos, those of you who remember Vice President Gaines was always depressed about our numbers. Vice President Sirmos is pretty upbeat about our numbers and is actually struggling to process all of the contracts and grants coming in. So he believes we will see a record year this year, likely exceeding even the best we did with ARRA. But a couple of other research highlights I want to mention. It's been a really good week for Nobel Prizes and Hawaii, particularly Hawaii Island. I just want to mention two of them that had a really deep connection to Hilo in particular. Nobel Prize winner Andrea Ghez from UCLA, she was one of the co-discoverers of the very large black hole at the center of our galaxy. All of her work was done over decades using the Keck telescope on Mauna Kea, in which the University of California is a major inventor. Bringing it closer to home, one of her graduate students, she is the advisor of Devin Chu. That name may be familiar. Devin is the son of Roberta and Newton Chu, two prominent Hilo citizens. Devin is also the grandson of Bobby Fujimoto, recently passed, beloved citizen of Hilo, who's also a former chair of the Board of Regents. A second Nobel Prize was just awarded to Jennifer Doudna. I've mentioned her before. In fact, I may even have a couple years ago mentioned that she seemed to be a strong candidate for a future Nobel Prize. I don't think any of us expected she would get it quite this soon. She is a Hilo High graduate. Her parents, her father was a faculty member at UH Hilo. Her mother was a faculty member at Hawaii Community College. She credits her inspiration to one of our high school outreach programs, particularly focused on supporting women in STEM, and it was a faculty member, we have yet to figure out exactly who, from the Cancer Center, a biochemist, who visited her high school and inspired her about that she could be, and as she put it, she could be feminine and a scientist, and explained to her what biochemistry was for the first time. And Jennifer then worked in the lab at UH Hilo of UHH Professor Emeritus of Biology, Don Hemis, who mentored her in his lab before she went off to Pomona and fame, and now with her Nobel Prize money, fortune as well. We just had her back in 2018, and she was glad to come back to Hawaii and share. She was the Rose and Raymond Sang Distinguished Lecturer, first at UH Hilo, and then she came over to Manoa and gave a couple of lectures here. The last research highlight I want to mention is much less current. Yesterday at Holmes Hall, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of AlohaNet. AlohaNet was the brainchild of Professor Emeritus Norm Abramson and also Professor Frank Kuo. They developed in AlohaNet the first operational computer network that used random access protocols. That is, it just blasted information out on the network without checking first. It was the first wireless network, and it utilized an experimental frequency granted by the military. It was an amazing project, and it literally developed the underpinnings that resulted in the internet, which didn't exist at the time, and all of the personal communication that takes place over cell phones. We celebrated this with an Ieee Award. That is the largest and most influential engineering society in the world. We had the president-elect of IEEE. We had the governor, who's a double E graduate, myself. We had Norm Abramson and Frank Kuo came in from California, where they both live. We had a variety of participants from Zoom, and we had Vint Cerf acknowledging them. Vint is a good friend of Hawaii and is considered one of the fathers of the internet itself, and he credited the work here at UH with the ability to do that. Let me shift a little bit now to some work that Vice President Young has been doing for the past month or so that culminated just this week. He has mentioned in the Budget and Finance Committee some work to do another bond issuance, and that successfully completed this week. We refinanced $208 million in pre-existing bonds, so we refinance bonds to get a lower rate and save money, and at the same time we sold $10 million in new revenue bonds. That's for the health and safety improvements to the parking structures that we've talked about in the Planning and Facilities Committee. As is his way, Vice President Young was not satisfied with how he did, because he was hoping for better, but the bond market is very responsive to the political environment in which we function, and this week was a lot harder than last week and the week before, so our savings weren't quite as great as we had hoped, but overall we're looking at, let me pull up the numbers, savings next year of about $3 million a year, and then $2 million a year for each of the next 19 years. That comes across a wide range of projects, but it's a total of $44 million in savings, or net present value of over $38 million, and every bit like that helps. As part of that, we had to go back for new bond ratings. It was a mixed story, although it could have been worse. We work with both Moody's and Fitch. Moody's downgraded us slightly from AA to AA3, which is still pretty good, but they maintained a stable outlook, which is great, and our sector is not that strong right now across the country. Fitch actually affirmed us at the same rates at a full AA rating, and they also maintained stable outlook, so that's pretty good. Finally, before I turn it over to Joe Daisy at Kauai Community College, I just want to take a brief moment to acknowledge two executives who have had a huge impact on this university, who will be leaving us this month. Don Straney is retiring after 10 years of service as both Chancellor at UH Hilo and Vice President for Academic Planning and Policy. He has had a huge positive impact both at UH Hilo, and Bonnie Irwin has now picked up the reins there. I know Don is well known to all of you, and also for his work in the system for the last few years, where he has re-energized the Office of Academic Planning and Policy and leaves a very hard act to follow. I also want to acknowledge someone not as well known to you who has shied away from the spotlight, and that's Roxy Shabazz. Roxy went to Mililani High School, although you might not know it if you looked at her. And she came in as our first really serious enrollment management person at UH Manoa. She's done an amazing job, and the numbers that I shared with you, including the over 3% growth this year in an incredibly difficult year when the entire country faced a downturn, is a credit to Roxy and the work and the team she has assembled, the strategy she's brought into this area. She will be deeply missed, both personally and professionally, and we wish her well as she returns to the East Coast at the University of Baltimore, and I know she will do as well for them as she did for us. And she also leads us a very deep hole that we have to fill at a really difficult time. These are both critical roles, and I will be coming back to you once we can do searches and identify great people to continue to lead us in these areas. And that concludes the President's report.